Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Ernesto. We are here for the second half of our show today. Just a moment, please, while I get Beretta on the line again. This is so weird. I have no idea why this is such a mess, but hopefully we'll be up in just a few moments. All right. I think we got her on.
Message includes your name,
Oh,
your
crap.
number.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. I'll be back with you in just a few. Stay tuned.
Message includes your name, your number.
All right, Beretta, can you hear me? Are you there with me?
I can. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm so glad that I have no idea what's happening with today's show, but I'm just happy that we got the show going. And we're all here together, and everybody is safe and sound.
Right. Well, my phone's glitching, so I think we're doing good by making this accomplishment.
Yeah, so we've gotten this far, so let's keep on going. So, Beretta, on all of that, what I was just now reading through about the particulars for this month, is there anything else that you wanted to add to that, or is that sort of like just the main themes that even you're picking up on your end?
Yeah, it's very much the same, all the same as far as the changes can occur, and like I said before, it'll be dependent upon each person as to whether it's a good thing or not.
What advice do you have for people this month in December and for this lunar cycle?
So I want to say to people, do not take whatever happens in the very near future as a personal sign that you're okay and open for vendetta. There's going to be a lot of left and right, and a lot of who's right and wrong are going to come back up again. And unfortunately, we can't get away from the politics and of the drama in our country. And one would almost hate to think that that's probably exactly what we're going to be dealing with, where all these doom and gloom kind of things are coming from. And it's not necessarily just in our country. So it's not just us that are dealing with things that will be very profound when it's all said and done.
And I think this may also kind of be some of the writing on the wall that speaks to a possible government collapse or something really, really messed up is going to happen next year, early next year. I don't know what this is, but it's going to be before the election, and it's good, and I hope everybody is prepared for this.
Yeah.
So the thing that I'm really kind of noticing, the biggest standout for me more than anything else is going to be the issue that we are all sort of going through an exam right now in life of whatever it is that we're being forced to work on about ourselves, and that we're continuing to see this, and it's just repeating itself. So the same themes are repeating themselves, and are we learning from this? How are we changing our own actions? That's really what a lot of this is coming down to. And perhaps maybe you're not even just changing your actions. Maybe you're just doing the same thing. But maybe in doing that same thing, you're getting sick of that whole process and realizing, what the heck am I doing this for? Because it's just not serving me. Like, for example, to socialize, to get out and to meet new people. I have just come to the conclusion and to accept the fact that it's not worth my time. It doesn't make me happy. It is so distressing and just not worth it to put myself out there, only to be knocked down 99% of the time when it's just not worth it. And as I always say, do what brings you joy. And socializing doesn't do that, especially when my social skills are not the best. So I've just kind of come to realize. So am I just gonna be a hermit? Am I gonna be a monk, an old man that just never has anybody? I don't really care one way or the other, because I would much rather be at home alone with my thoughts and my spirit friends than out doing something that's just creating all types of damage and distress that's totally unneeded. For me, there's a total unwant for it, and I don't shame myself or force myself into thinking that I have to have this for myself, because I just straight up don't want it. I'd rather be doing other things. It's sad, matter of fact, in the world, that depending on where you are in the country, that you can spend $20 at the dispensary, which will probably last you for a while, or you can spend $20 at the movie theater. I think most people, it's pretty obvious what that choice is going to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think it depends upon what part of the path, what part of their journey they're on, and how hectic it may be. Some people may not be able to think about sitting in the theater long enough to have that kind of enjoyment and create that kind of memory.
The biggest thing of all is that, whatever you may be doing is just pay attention to yourself. Like, it doesn't always have to be so just going through the motion. That's where a lot of us really like to get stuck, and we think to ourselves, I have to do this because it's comfortable and it makes me feel good. And then when you take that away and you try it the other way, you find out, this actually might not be too bad, that there really is a blue sky and that the world is not scary. There aren't monsters under my bed kind of thing. Just dispelling those myths or those self-sabotages that we set up for ourselves. That's a really big piece, I think, of what's going to be happening for a lot of us over the course of this next month, is just realizing, I don't have to do that anymore. Are you kidding me? There's another way. I didn't know that. And as basic as it may seem, it truly is news to us that it doesn't have to always be this other way.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what we're taught as we are conditioned to believe growing up, that good things only come with hard work and lessons only come if they hurt. And neither of those are actually true. So really depending upon what part of, your world you're in, depending upon what you're going through, it really will flavor what the future memories of this time frame become. And there are a lot of memories, so hopefully they're good ones.
And we've talked a lot about on the show about things that we can do to keep ourselves distracted or occupied when we're waiting for that other shoe to drop, like a lot of us are right now. And believe me, it's going to be big. It really, truly is. And I'll tell you, last week I was just kind of thinking, yeah, something's coming. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know it's coming. And then it was by about like Thursday, Friday of last weekend, I was just sort of like, oh, wait, are you kidding me? Like, that's so much more than what I ever thought was even possible. and then it felt so real, and it was kind of scary. And it was like, I've never believed in something like this before. I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now. And it was almost like the kind of conviction that, somebody had by saying that, like, Santa Claus is real kind of thing. It truly sort of felt along those lines. And a lot of us, I should hope, are kind of coming to these new epiphany realizations. And but the big takeaway, again, is the fact that it truly does come down to what I'm doing here in the moment with myself, to step outside of myself to get those other things. Like I had the glorious thought to myself, if I had $2 billion, let's just say, that would give me all of the money and the access that I would need to accomplish literally anything that I put my mind to. In a world like that, who needs vices? Who needs to have all of those other distractions? Because then it truly does become, I am doing, like my life's work. I am truly doing what makes me happy. And that was sort of a new thought to me, like being able to conceptualize the world without vices like that, since that's always been such a constant for me, and something that I've even sort of led myself into believing that I sort of need these activities, because if I'm not doing it in this one fashion, then I'm going to do it in another way that's much more damaging. So it's a good thing for myself. But I'm even starting to question, like, do I even really need to do that? Like, looking at the behaviors of people who are truly happy and successful and fulfilled with their lives and what their day-to-day looks like versus, like what I think my day-to-day would ideally look like, and they with each other, like it really does kind of come down to, I don't have a reason I don't have a reason to fear that a knife is going into my back, because I know that it just doesn't have to. Why am I going to live in some place where that's even possible?
Right. And so there's where you decide, you pick your joy by the factor that you don't have to, it doesn't have to be at somebody else's expense. Your joy is based on what you create, your thoughts, your sounds, your spirit guides, whatever, and you're not being let down by people. And that, Ernesto, is exactly when you meet the person that you're looking for. And, when you finally get to that point where you let all of the control strings go, you don't really even care anymore if you meet someone. That's when they come. And they come because you let down the walls and destroyed whatever limitations you had put up in order to keep what you thought had to come through control. And no, it's not up to you. It's really not your call. It is, however, it is the way to go when you're wanting something positive to take place. You got to quit chasing it. But this time frame, where we're recognizing the things that are beneficial, we're looking at, that chase, that effort, that work, that hard effort, we're being given that reward.
And that non-attachment piece is really kind of huge, because I don't even care about all of the other stuff that I haven't attracted in my life just yet. What I'm really more focused on is just like the mental freedom that I feel like really any moment of the day. It's not even like from day to day. It's just like any moment where I don't feel burdened or overwhelmed or controlled or compelled to do anything. It's just like it's going to do its own thing. So-and-so has their issues, and I may not like the way that all of that went down, but I can leave that there. And I don't care if I pick up the phone one way or the other. It's just the same thing can be applied towards meeting new people. I'm not really too interested in going out to socialize. I don't care if I have other people. I have so many other things that I would rather be working on. And I focus on that.
Yeah.
That's how I get through the day-to-day is, what is it through my own actions that makes me happy? And this is something that I guess that's relatively foreign to a lot of people who might be older or who were not raised with this. But in today's society, having a sense of vision for the future for yourself, about building a brand or whatever it is that you may be doing with yourself, that seems to be something that pretty much every human being on the planet has. And it's a relatively new concept, because I definitely wasn't raised with it even when I was in school, and I graduated 20 years ago. And we weren't taught any of these kinds of things about having a sense of future vision. It's only because I'm an innovator and a natural born leader that these things come to me. So it's something that I really wish a lot of people would just start fixating on, is instead of focusing on how am I just going to get through the day, and let's say somebody's retired and they don't have a whole lot of activities going on for them or people in their life, how do they keep themselves going? Well, what's their sense of vision? What is it that you're working on for yourself? Design a program, do something that points you in that direction, because it really does put a carrot underneath your nose, and that drive for constantly just learning more or to do more, that gets you through that day-to-day life. Otherwise, it just becomes a very kind of scary situation. Like, okay, so same four walls look the same every single day ever since COVID happened. No holidays, no Christmas, no birthdays. It's just the same day, different paints. That's all. So what good is any of this? Like, why are we even here? Well, maybe I should just go back to bed and hope that tomorrow will be a new day. But tomorrow's going to be the same crap anyway, so why am I even here? Like, it just gets to the point where we start to wonder, how am I going to go through this day-to-day boring existence until I just keel over and it's finally finished? That seems pretty that's very dull. That's not a great outlook to have on life. So that's why that sense of future vision is so important, because it really does motivate us. And, this could be very basic, something like, I'm going to get all of my kitchen utensils organized, or I am going to organize my closets this year. This is something that I've always wanted to do, but you just make it happen, however that may be. And so it doesn't have to be anything big, like you're going to start a company or a brand or invent a new product. It could just be your day-to-day life, just making that a better place. That in and of itself is a huge quest for happiness that a lot of us should get lost in, because it really does make a difference. I'm amazed how much better I feel just by cleaning off my desk and making all of that clutter go away.
Right. I can't. People try to convince me that they can function in just a rural, unorganized place. And the reality of that is, no, they can't. They might be able to function around that mess, but they can't thrive or create in it. And there's a big difference between those.
There really is. And Veretta, with what you do in your personal life, that you're involved with so many different people and activities. And then, you and I are working on this concept of, like establishing brand and doing all of these other things. So, I mean, if it weren't for, I think, the IT stuff being so complicated and so demanding, which it truly is, then I think that we would hopefully get a lot more of that stuff done. But that is something that you and I definitely need to talk about, is what is the future of this endeavor, of this show and everything else that we're doing. I think we have a sense of that, but to actually like write that all down and see it like spelled out would be kind of nice sometime. But for a lot of us, in just this day to day, especially with being shown a test, which is basically what we're all going through, is a test in life, that we do need to be challenging ourselves to step outside, because, remember, the same lessons are going to repeat themselves over and over again. And those lessons don't change until I change. Because, it's right. Kind of like I get on my case a lot when I'm setting up something in Final Fantasy Record Keeper, and it doesn't work out, and I get upset, and then I shut it down, and then I say, let me try this again, but I'm just going to make this one change this one character, and that should fix everything. And I get distracted, or I get a phone call or something, and I go right back into doing it again. And I didn't change that character, that one thing I said I was going to. And the exact same thing happens. I get wiped out, and then I get upset because nothing changed. And then it dawns on me, well, of course nothing changed because you didn't change it. It truly is right. That simple. That, if you change something, there is a reasonable expectation you will get different results. They may not be what you want, but they're definitely going to be different, and that's the only way you're going to know if it's even worthwhile.
Right. That's exactly right.
And, like a lot of us learn this as children, that I shouldn't put my hand on the hot stove. That seems like a bad idea. And, we think it's fun. We think it's games. And then when we actually burn ourselves, then we say, I'm not doing that again. It's like that one time when I drank too much, and then something really unfortunate happened and I hurt myself. And then I saw all the evidence the next day. I just thought to myself, right in there, I don't ever need to do that one again. So that kind of got it out of my system.
Yeah, I had those days too. But I'll tell you what, as far as future vision, when I went to school, they were still offering home ec as a requirement for graduation. And home ec meant typing, cooking, some type of bookkeeping, some type of menial skill of labor. And to even take that another step further, not only did they offer that, 9 times out of 10 it was all full of girls, because they were the only one that would actually, be needing any of that stuff. So for future vision, you were just shut down. In my generation, you had to fight, and then you got looked at like, should you actually be doing that? And I was the kind of person that really, I didn't care if people looking at me, challenging me for my action. My action would always keep me safe versus lead me into danger. And although I didn't know what it was called then, I listened to that little voice. I listened to that coaxing or the banter because it was trying to keep me safe, and I knew it. So the difference between my generation and yours is you got hella games to grow up with. I got a stick and a ball and some outside chalk, jumping rope, a lot of sun lotion because we were outside a lot. And the reality of it is there really wasn't anything that we were actually missing. We had a full social life because we couldn't find something like that anywhere else, right? At the time, we didn't have a computer to tap into or be able to share our information over social media so we can get hits and response. It's so much easier at this point in time to actually be able to possibly create a brand or create yourself and have it distributed or applied quickly because of the amount of free range in media we have now. So to be where I am right now, I would have, and having started where I started, if I'd have been born a little bit earlier, it probably would have been more difficult. But there were plenty of psychics and prophets and in the past, you know, that would tell people time and time again, no, there's a big change coming. You need to be ready for this. And then they weren't because, of course, they didn't listen. And so it was a lot more difficult than it should have been. But decide what kind of a life you want to have. You can either survive or thrive. And thriving is just a matter of accepting that maybe you can't do what you want all the time, but in a method of trying to survive and be healthy, and while we're doing it, this is what's good for us. And this is what's not. And I'm going to choose the good for us and reap the precaution of when you're throwing good energy out, you're getting good energy back. And the same goes for the negative.
And so if you're, let me just look at this. Okay. So if you're looking at our YouTube cast right now and you're seeing that chart that I have on the screen, if you personally have any planets that are around that blue or the black dot or the pink dot, more so the blue and the black one especially. If you have money planets around those larger colored dots, then you're probably going to start to experience some shrinkage of your finances or just shrinkage in general, meaning that like your living situation may not be as padded or as comfortable as what it used to be. Like, you know, maybe you can't afford to buy Fiji water anymore and you have to buy the store brand. You're not going to explode just by having to make these small changes. But this is something where everybody can benefit from their thinking. You'll see those two black circles on the left side, that one that has ME for Mercury on the left, and then the on the upper left, and then Jupiter on the bottom left. So those two planets right there have to do with how you can personally benefit from your thinking at this time. And that's all happening around that black dot. The midpoint of those two planets happens around the black dot. So where I'm going with this is that if you have personal points or money planets around the blue or the black dot right now, you would be very wise to start thinking about how can I downsize, because that downsizing is going to be like, really, it's going to be a key out the locked up horrible castle that you've been stuck in. Because in order for us to be able to thrive in the world, just as what you were saying, Beretta, that you may not be able to get to do all of the things that you want, but you're going to get to do the things that you need that are just right for you and that totally make you happy and satisfied. And so applying that same concept to our overall everyday handling of life. And, you know, I may not get what I want right now. Like I may not be able to afford this house or this car or even this dinner right now. But, you know, I can do some other things instead that make me just as happy. It's not quite the same, but it's passable. So that passable territory is where everybody really needs to find that sweet spot and figure out how to make it work for you. Because when we start losing things, that ego is going to start kicking and screaming because you're losing things, death. We can't do that. That's not allowed. But if you can figure out how to make it work for you specifically, then you're going to be quite pleased with the way everything goes.
Patience is a virtue.
And this is going to be the dichotomy in the experiences of people who are going through that test in life, of people who are going through some really big gains and positive things, and then people who are slowly having more and more things taken away from them. Another common narrative or theme right now that's kind of going on is if you or somebody that you know is experiencing a separation or have some type of fraught relationship that's kind of on the rocks, that's getting even more icy than what it's ever been, well, you're going to be frozen out. That's going to be expected. It's going to go away. But if it's that important to you, then please fix it, because this is your last chance to do so. Once the damage has been done, it'll be too late. And that's also another energy of what we were talking about earlier, having to do with the negative end of some of those planets over there on the right, that Mars, Admetos, and Saturn, having to do with acting too late, and then you don't get to do it again because it was a one-time opportunity. That's going to be concerning, like that separation from somebody in your life, whoever that may be. So if that's a scenario that resonates with you, like there's somebody that's on the rocks, and it is truly important to you, then do what you need to do to fix it and to make it right and to make it happy, because it's going to go away otherwise. And it's really down to you and how that character or that person will go down in your own life story, if it's going to be a happy or a sad ending. And this is going to be that time. So a lot of you may be experiencing this, especially with the holidays going on right now and all of that weirdness. Right. So expect that to come to a head. Make peace with it now, or just don't be upset when nature takes its own course.
Right. Exactly. Little nudges.
So, Beretta, my question to you is, for a lot of us who are stuck in these very difficult family situations, like let's say that you have a child who is married to a narcissist, which is usually a common complaint that we often hear from people, that, your daughter-in-law or son-in-law is a total monster, narcissist kind of person. If that's the scenario or the dragon that you're dealing with, can you fix or make something like good? Or is it even possible?
Yeah, it is. And so I go without saying that it's going to be easy. You're not hearing me say that at all. But in retrospect of looking back at people that could have dealt with things differently, they chose to hang in there with their narcissist. And so there are things that you can do for yourself. There are things you can do for you as a couple with someone else. There are things that you can understand about why you put up with what you put up with. That helps determine who you are. That then helps you determine if you want to keep being treated that way. Narcissism exists for a reason, so we've got to figure out, which end of the coin are we on? Are we the narcissist or are we the reason? And because narcissists don't learn through their experience. The only thing that they learn through is how to manipulate. Now, that experience, after they push somebody into a responsive or, an explosion of emotion before retreat, then that's where they're getting their satisfaction from. So, narcissists, they do not need any reason. They're okay with themselves. That's, there's not a person that can love them as much as they love them. So they're only happy if they've got somebody running because they couldn't rule them.
Well, and that's the way that whole, I always refer to that as programming, really. I mean, it's essentially a deal that we with the dark side before we choose to come here. But, essentially, I view a lot of this as programming. And if we could course correct or run a charm school for these types of people, that would be a reality show that I would watch.
Well, I think unfortunately it would probably start with electric shock therapy or lobotomization or something that takes them away from who they used to be and starting to think about something else than themselves. Now, having that been said, I have to be fair. I know narcissistic people that once they realized who they were based on who they were told they were, not who they thought they were, they really wanted to apply some type of moderation in the way they thought. And so because they did not want to affect people the way the old whoever they were was affecting people, they really did want to have social community. They taught themselves how not to put them first, how to allow them, even though it wasn't sincere, they allowed themselves to consider the fact that, if they were going to get something from people, they needed to give it in return, even if it meant just acknowledging who they were. So I do know narcissists that have decided that, they cared enough for other things besides themselves, even if it wasn't people. Their pets maybe brought them away from understanding that they were not the nucleus of all universe. There may be other things and people that were important too. You live and learn.
And these are all going to be things that we just sort of have to make peace with or figure out on our own. This lunar cycle, it really is going to be a big deal for a lot of us. That we have to change. This is not one of those situations where it's just going to happen because we said so. Like, I cannot will this person to behave a certain way just by my own thinking. It doesn't work like that. We have to compromise.
Right.
We have to have a conversation about it. Like, something that's often lost in my household that creates a lot of friction is, don't tell me to do X unless you're going to meet me halfway. If you're not going to meet me halfway and you just want to make all these demands, then, then that's living with a 3-year-old, and I'm not going to do that. So you can go kick rocks at this point. Like, that's a really, really big thing with people who are very difficult that we have fraught relationships with, is get them to meet you halfway, because that's only fair. Otherwise, then it's just a one-sided street. And why am I going to try to please somebody that doesn't care about me? That's really what it comes down to.
You're not. You're absolutely not. You're right. And when you're looking at what you're wanting to receive, you always have to keep in mind equal energy exchange rule applies regardless of what realm of life you're in or who you are or what you want. If you're not willing to put the energy into what it takes to receive, you're not going to get it. Period.
So it's going to be a really big month for a lot of us. And I just want to let everybody know that if you were kind of curious about this, this is definitely something that I can address in a basic analysis with you. I have that menu of services up on our Linktree, so you can see what that fee schedule is all about. But what's really nice about the basic analysis for this type of work is the fact that I can let you know how you will personally be affected by this issue. And if for anybody who's on the phone lines, please give us a call. We'll be here for about the next 9 minutes or so at area code 319-527-6071. And we can get you on and talk to you about how you'll be affected this lunar cycle. It is going to be quite monumental for many people. But, if whether or not you are personally affected really kind of comes down to what personal points that you have in this particular heavy point where that big red dot is in the chart. And that's going to determine like how you're affected. Like Veretta, you have a lot of your work stuff that's there right now. So you're probably going through a lot of shakeups and issues in your personal life that have to do with either work-related matters, family-related matters, or just people getting along in general. That these are going to be some major themes, and you've probably even started to see the writing on the wall before we even had this conversation. Like, this is pointing a certain way, and I know it's about to happen, and it's for better or worse, it's going to happen. So I just have to make peace with it. So, you don't have a whole lot of personal points at that red dot in your chart. So, the only personal point you have is your node, which is your connections to people. And on opposite end of this red dot is my meridian. So that's my soul. That's the seat of my soul right there. So I will definitely be affected by this lunar cycle. So that's your connection to it. Is that you're going to know a lot of people who are going to be affected this time around. You'll probably start to get a lot of phone calls and updates from people that you haven't heard in a very long time from, just because, like things are suddenly going really well. Like, what's the next step for me that I need to know?
Or things are going really bad all of a sudden. What did I do wrong?
See, that's what baffles me. Like, why is it that we're wired as human beings to only reach out for help when things are bad?
Well, because we're conditioned to think when things are good that we're the top of the bomb, we're all there is and we don't need anything more. When we're not doing so good, however, is when we need to be reaching out, and that's a chore for a lot of people.
That is, and that's something, as somebody who has been misdiagnosed as a psych patient many times in my life, that's something that's totally lost on me. Like, people who are so depressed that they can't get out of bed or function or do anything, like that doesn't make sense to me. Like, that's that doesn't really register. So I'm always of the belief, let me drag you out of this hole, let me do what I can. But some people, that's where they just want to be, and that was a real learning lesson for me when I had a friend who was just like that. And I just had to say, okay, so the best thing that I can do is just be here whenever the phone rings, and that's all. And, that's just a thing, is that, we're human beings, we're embarrassed, we're prideful. We don't want to let people know that we're a herd animal and that things are not going the way that they're supposed to or that we wanted to. So that's embarrassing, It's like it really exposes part of our soul that we don't want a whole lot of people to see. So that's why we can't really step out. But the truth of the matter is that the moment things start to get a little bit sticky, making that phone call is the best thing that you can do, just because we can do some course correction that'll really blow your mind and give you options. That's really what we're here for more than anything else, is that we're here to empower you, to give you options, to let you know that it doesn't have to be this way, that this is just a rough patch and you can do these other things to sort of distract or redirect yourself. That's one of the beautiful things about alchemy, is the fact that you truly can course correct, but it's all up to you.
Yeah, that is the absolute truth. And it doesn't necessarily take big monumental things to help, again, assist in the change of trajectory that gets us back on track and we're up and running again.
Yeah, so it could just be very simply like you might have to see somebody for a little bit, because like the waking up every day and drinking just isn't working out for you. That's the real source that needs to be addressed. And like, let's talk about that now before 6 months from now, when it becomes a real issue.
Mhm. Yeah.
People
are here to learn. I'm sure we'll get that lesson.
It's funny. I met somebody one time who said something like, I'm going to give you my number. That's no problem. I want to get in touch with you. But if you get arrested, you need to have the house number, and it takes a little bit to earn that. So if you get arrested, don't call me. I'm not you should have called me a long time before that happened.
Yeah, well, these days, I don't know how it works anymore. It used to be if you got arrested, you had to make a collect call, but the collect call you would make to a landline. So I don't even know if a cell phone. Well, I guess I can now, because you're being asked if you want to accept charges. It's just It's silly, the things that have changed over time. I can definitely feel privileged to have been able to experience all the great things in IT and whatnot. I can only imagine what the next 100 years will bring.
Well, like if you've ever seen the TV series The Americans, it's on FX on Hulu. It's a great show to watch, and it totally blows your mind because it's a period piece set in the 1980s. They're talking about like KGB counterintelligence kind of stuff, and everything that these spies figure out pre-internet, pre-computers is just insane. And I'm just kind of like, how did people survive before the internet? It really makes you wonder, like, how we take everything for granted today.
Well, so back in the day, honey, they had huge books called the Encyclopedia. And to be more precise, the Encyclopedia Britannica. And that's really, you had to go to either a library or your encyclopedia set to obtain the information that you needed to know for whatever you needed to know it for. And, the thing is too, back in the day when you only had either authorities' word on it or maybe written text, people believed what you had to say. People believed you in what you were telling them. There's so much more now that as a human race, we are learning leaps and bounds about ourselves and the psychology of why we're here and what makes us think and work and all that stuff. We're getting ready to absorb also the fact that people like you, yourself and myself and anybody that embraces something more than just five senses is understanding and learning that that's the way it's going to be now. That we're not going back. Once you ring that bell that we all have intuition, we all have the ability to say, hey, let me settle down, meditate, and get some info, our whole reality of our human race will change. We will think a lot different about what we can do versus what we can't do. Then we'll shift it out of survive into thrive, and everybody will be happy. Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be amazing. And what's really exciting is we're going to close down the show for this week, and we will be back with you guys on next Wednesday's program from 7 to 8 p.m. Next week's show, because we talked about Be Here Now last week, next week's show of the Alchemy Annex will be dealing with learning from the past. That'll be the next episode's topic of discussion, so we'll get into all of those issues. And if you would like to get in touch with us about a basic analysis for the new moon for this cycle, of maybe you're going through something and it's just a lot right now, then we can reach out. We can set something up and have that conversation. It really does make a difference, just so that you know which options are available to you right now. For all other things Uranian astrology, be sure to check out my link tree, and you can hit up Veretta at VerettaVision.com. Veretta, as always, thank you so much for joining us here on the program today, and we will be back with you guys next Thursday. I do wish everybody the very, very best of luck in this upcoming lunar cycle. And the reason why it is so important this time around, more so than any other time, is because this lunar cycle specifically concerns the future, your future. So what's happening right now, this is kind of like, this is setting the stage for what's going to happen over the next several years. And I really want you to be set up in the very best way possible. Stack that deck in your favor, because this is the time that you can do that. And we're not going to get a whole lot more time to make too many modifications on this end. So this is why this lunar cycle is so critical to our own personal actions and that personal test that we're undergoing, whatever that may be, that we are taking the high road, or at least challenging ourselves to think about taking the high road and whatever that might look like. Because what happens now is going to determine the course of actions in our personal lives for about the next, I'll say, 2 to 5 years on average for most people. So it's going to be pretty significant. And I do wish everybody all the best. Veretta, do you have anything else that you wanted to add? Any other words of wisdom?
No, just buckle your seatbelt and hang on. We're in for a ride.
That is absolutely true. It's going to be a doozy. It's going to be big, and be prepared for all of the most amazing surprises and learning moments to possibly throw at you.
Yep. Roller coaster 101.
It really truly is. But it's if you've been doing your homework, if you've been paying attention to what we've been saying on the show, life really does get kind of good for you. So I definitely write to us and let us know how that's going, because we'd love to hear success stories about how everybody's doing on the show. For all other things Uranian astrology, be sure to check us out on Linktree and VerettaVision.com. And until next Wednesday, we will see you guys then. Good luck and Godspeed.
Many blessings. Good night.